What's up, guys? We're back with another Marvel Legends review, taking a look at two figures from the current Doctor Strange wave. Now, this wave is mostly movie figures. And you know, I don't usually dip my toe into movie figures too much unless there's something really special about them. So I mostly stick to comic stuff. So I'm taking a look at the two comic book figures in this wave. We've got a look at SPAYRE and Sleepwalker. So this is, of course, the figure that was sort of teased as being one of two new figures that had never gotten a figure before and was part of the old 91 comic card set. So I'm very curious to take a look at this guy, but I'm also curious to check this guy out too. They're both very creepy looking figures, and I'm just pretty excited to have both in figure form, Sleepwalker in particular. These guys, of course, come in our standard Marvel Legends style packaging. So figure there in the big window. You've got some amazing David Nakayama artwork on the sides and a larger shot on the back, and then each figure gets, you know, the normal treatment. We get a little bit of a bio, and then you get your cross-sell and our Build-A-Figure. So let's do it. Let's pull them out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our Sleepwalker. We're going to start with him first because, well, again, he's the one I'm mostly interested in for various non-important reasons, really. So let's see what this guy can do, see how he moves around. There's not a whole lot to really, you know, be left to the imagination on this one. It's a Bucky Cap figure, and these both are all old parts, like outside of the heads and stuff like that. So there's a lot of familiar territory here. It's basically a Bucky Cap figure, though. So we've got a head that can look up slightly, not a lot, but he can. He can look down a little bit, not too much. There, you know, there's obviously stuff in the way. He's got a hood. He's got a cloak too. You've got rotation. He doesn't have any tilt, though. You know, Bucky Cap figures rarely do. Arms go out at the shoulders, about that far, and then they can rotate. Of course, you know, they're only going to go back so far because of that cape, but he goes forward all the way. You've got double-jointed elbows. I'm going to point this out now. There is some serious gummy plastic going on with this guy. I mean, the joints in particular are incredibly gummy. SPAYRE is the same way, too. But we're talking about Sleepwalker right now. You've got hinges at the wrist, rotation. He's got his ab crunch, so he goes backwards. Pretty good, really, but you've got that awful looking thing there in the middle, the chunk taken out. Not unfamiliar for this body. Goes forward really well, though. I mean, this ab crunch still works really nicely. You got your waist twist. Legs out, he can do the splits. Kick forward all the way. Kick backwards slightly. You've got your thigh cut. Super gummy knees too down here, so point that out now, but they are still double jointed, so they go backwards. Pretty good, not the greatest. We've got our boot cut down here, which is of course nicely hidden by those wraps, and you've got your rocker, and you've got hinges down at those ankles. So I mean, nothing new, nothing different, honestly nothing very exciting when it comes to the articulation scheme on this guy. The only thing that's truly weird is the fact that there is some seriously gummy joints going on here with this guy, which I know some folks have been reporting lately, more so than I can remember. I just don't know that I've truly encountered it too much lately, except for this particular batch of figures. These two just seem really gummy throughout. Aesthetically, though, this guy does look all right. There's really not a lot to his design, like to translate into figure form. It's a mostly blue body with a green arm and some purple accents. And despite that sounding very basic, he does look pretty cool. Like, I've always really liked Sleepwalker's design, regardless of how flashy it may or may not be. And I think it's nicely translated into figure form here. The blue in particular is very consistent across the figure. You know, sometimes that can vary. There's obviously different materials in play here. So the arms, or the arm and legs and torso do look pretty good in conjunction with each other. You've got your wraps on the wrists, the boots, the wrap here on the thigh is cinched in place pretty well. I don't feel like it's going to be going anywhere. And then you've got the belt here as well, which is a little free floating piece. I do like the wraps on the leg because, of course, you know, it adds a little bit of asymmetry to him, just to make him look a little bit more, I don't know, less plain. The big thing for this guy with me, though, is one of them anyway, is the cape, because generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of plastic capes. They always tend to get in the way. This one doesn't really, and I think mostly that is because of the size. So it's not super long. Like, it really only goes down to just past his knee. So it's not something that's going to be hitting the floor or whatever you've got him standing on. So it's not going to like prohibit him being just balanced well. It's got all the tatters, and it's, you know, a nasty, gnarled piece of fabric. tons of like folds and wrinkles in it. And I think the sculpt does look good. It doesn't really get in the way of his head articulation too much. I mean, he can still look up and he can look down a little bit, surprisingly. I mean, it doesn't get too much in the way. It's just, it's always going to get a little bit in the way. So it's maybe not one of those that I'm going to be jumping for an immediate fabric replacement, which I do think is a pretty good sign of my comfort level with it. We do have something that really does stand out on this figure, though, and that, of course, is the green. Not just because it's so different from the other colors on the figure, but because lime green is not necessarily a color that you have a lot of figures with. So this is definitely something that's going to pop on the shelf just because of the fact that it is kind of a lesser used color. And then, of course, the fact that it does clash with the rest of the figures. So this arm stands out really well. But, of course, the head sculpt is where it's truly at. And I think they really nailed his head sculpt. He does have a very, kind of basic stoic expression, but he has really nicely sculpted features to kind of demonstrate the sunken eyes, the kind of accentuated cheekbones, and that kind of zombie-like almost mouth that he has. So I do really like the sculpt there. There's a little bit of darker green around the eyes and the mouth to sort of bring it out a little bit. And then, of course, you've got those very piercing, pupilless red eyes, which I'm always a fan of. Not to mention the fact that he's got a hood, which is kind of cattywampously thrown all over his head, but I do think that very much fits him. So it's not like a standard hood that is just perfectly on. I think it looks nice being kind of wonky on this guy. So while he's pretty basic in many respects, he does very much look the part. Now, as far as accessories goes, he doesn't really come with much of anything. Neither of these figures do. So he's got fists on him in the box, and then you get a set of style pose, almost spellcasting hands. He doesn't have a great deal of like extra stuff to give him that I can really think of off the top of my head. I would have loved some, maybe some mystical kind of effects, or even like some smoke or something, maybe along the lines of like what Mysterio comes with, because he doesn't do a great deal like that. But I don't know that we really have anything in the Legends repertoire that's going to adequately display a lot of his power sets. So while he doesn't come with a great deal, I wish he came with something more, just because I always want more, but at least we do get a couple hands. Now for Despair, he is on a different body than Sleepwalker, but he's not necessarily much more articulated because his cape is a very different story. It's much more prohibitive. So we've got a head that can look up, really good. He can look down a little bit, not too bad. It still manages to work. No real tilt to speak of. You do have full rotation, but of course that big cowl is going to get in the way. Arms go out at the shoulders with the cape on. They're only going to go that far, and he's likely always wearing this, so we're going to keep it on. They go, they would of course be able to rotate, but they go out about that far. You're going to take some of that cape with you. He does have a butterfly joint in there. This is the Sunfire torso. You've got your bicep swivel. He's got double jointed elbows. He has the very gummy plastic as well. I mean, like, look at all of the give there. That's crazy. We've got hinges and rotation at that wrist. Ab goes backwards about that far. They kick forward pretty good. It's not as good as the Bucky Cap torso, but of course, you get butterfly joints with this one as a trade-off. We've got our waist twist. Legs go out pretty much all the way. They kick forward pretty much all the way. Backwards, not really any. You've got your thigh cut. We've got double jointed knees. These again are very gummy. And we've got our boot cut down here, which is also pretty gummy feeling too, honestly. And then we've got rocker, and we've got hinges down at those ankles. So he's very similar. The butterfly joints are like the big difference on this guy, but at the same time, his cape does get in the way a lot more because it's full on covering the shoulders and drapes almost down to the feet. Now, when it comes to aesthetics, he is a little bit less impressive to me than Sleepwalker. They both kind of have their plastic feeling issues. I don't really know a better way to say that right now, but I think it contributes to him looking kind of wonky here. The blacks do not match throughout the figure, and I do believe, I'm quite certain really, that whatever's making him so gummy is making the paint not work correctly either, because he is inconsistently fading from white to black on his forearms. Like it's some sort of weird gray-brown color here right around the joint, which just does not look good. It's the same on some parts over on this side here too, which is really weird. The white otherwise is very crisp and clean, so this black paint is just not, it's not good enough I would say, in comparison to maybe how the plastic is being used here, because he does feel very, very gummy throughout. So I'm guessing that's playing a role here. He still looks the part pretty well. I do really like the cape. It's going to get in the way quite a bit compared to, you know, Sleepwalker's cape, for example, because it is so big, but it's got nice tatters all over it. So I like the sculpt. It looks good. Very much fitting for the character. The inside is all textured. It's like a web texture almost. And then the way it kind of drapes over his shoulders does look good. Like, it definitely fits him really, really well, but of course it's going to get in the way. So you do have to worry about that kind of stuff. Otherwise, though, my main complaint on this figure is the inconsistency of black and how it's playing a role with whatever's going on with the paint on at least my figure's forearms. I don't seem to have any issues like that when it comes to the head sculpt, though. Paint is mostly okay. There's a few little spots, like in the wrinkles of the head, that I do think maybe some of the detail on the white is lost a little bit, but the sculpt is really fantastic. It's got that sort of, mouth that's covered with flesh kind of effect going on, so he's kind of stretching his mouth open, and you can see it like tearing the skin to make those slits in the mouth. And then just the overall shape, the way the paint kind of makes the face on him, rather, because otherwise he'd just sort of be a black void of a head, I think looks really nice. And then in the same way that Sleepwalker has him, he's got those piercing red pupilless eyes that I always like. It just makes somebody look a little bit more menacing when they don't have any pupils, especially when it comes to some sort of ghoulish creature like this. So he's not perfect. He's got a few issues for sure, but I do think he looks the part pretty well. And, you know, kind of in a vanilla pose on your shelf, he's probably going to be just fine. He also doesn't really come with any accessories. You get your BAF parts with these figures, of course. You get some legs if you have these guys, but he also comes with some hands. So he's got fists in the box, and he's got some menacing style pose hands, maybe spellcasting hands. He could have used some effect parts too, but of course, you know, again, he didn't, for whatever budgetary reasons I'm sure are to play with these two figures only getting extra hands. So overall, both of these figures are okay. I think Sleepwalker is definitely the more consistent of the two. His design translates really nicely into figure form. Colors are really great. That green in particular definitely pops on him. I wish he came with a few more accessories, but he's still a really solid figure, despite some of the odd gumminess that he's got going on. Despair, however, definitely has some concerns for me because, well, he seems even gummier somehow. Colors, and by colors I mean black, is inconsistent across the figure, and the forearms, the paint on the white just does not work all that well. At least on my figure, there's something wonky going on to make it look, I don't know, not black. So it's really weird. He looks okay otherwise, but there are definitely some concerns for sure. Both of them, however, will probably look just fine, kind of in a vanilla pose on your shelf for sure. So that's going to do it for this look at the Marvel Legends Sleepwalker and Despair. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.